Military history continues to be written in 2025. And for the second time in a month, a foreign attack has exposed a weakness in the United States. Russian strategic bombers destroyed an unprecedented wide-scale drone attack. This is a historic attack. This is unprecedented. It is amazing. Congratulations to the Ukrainians. And we're going to go through a little bit of it and, frankly, how it affects the United States, which to me is the most important thing. The attacks that went after the heart of Russia's strategic aviation capabilities and one arm of its nuclear deterrent should serve as global wake-up call. We're going to go through some of the videos. This is one of the drones flying along a line of destroyed Tu-95s. Clearly already been attacked by multiple drones. This is an amazing asymmetric attack. And how they did this is something that is frankly frightening and should put the United States on clear warning. Dozens of films of small FPV-like drones which reportedly struck multiple aircraft and other targets at the base. You can clearly see an FPV drone flying right there. How did this occur? This video is the best explanation. Here we go. You can see drones flying out of the back of this truck. Now what seemed to have happened, and this is the Northern Fleet Base, by the way, all the way up in Murmansk, 1,000 kilometers away. How did this happen? Well, I want to get to that picture, and I'm going to come back to that. This is how it was done. These are containers with false tops, each containing FPV drones with explosives. And what happened is they just drove this truck right up next to the base. The tops were taken off or in some way mechanically removed, and the drones went to work. And the destruction, as of right now, the estimates are at $4.5 billion in destruction to the Russian Strategic Air Force. This is an FPV drone slowly making its way to the top of one of these Tu-95s, making its way very slowly, as you can see, slowly dropping, slowly dropping. Look at the time it has here. Look at all of the time it has to do this attack. This speculation, could those be AI-driven drones? Very possible. Could those be man-operated? Those are vast distances for those to be man-operated. But it's very possible. Satellite uplink technology today could very well make that possible. So why is this a danger to the United States? As you can see, these aircraft were just sitting right out on the runway. Just sitting there. Just sitting out there on the tarmac, waiting for use, waiting for repair, just sitting there on the ramp, doing nothing. Unprotected. This is an article from the War Zone. This is from last year, almost a year to date. June 12th, 2024. Does the U.S. need to build hardened aircraft shelters for its combat aircraft? I think the answer is a clear yes. As we go through this article, and everything is going to be linked here, of course, this article talks about the need for hardened aircraft shelters. Clearly here it shows a picture from Korea. A picture from a ceremony in 2020 marked the completion and construction of new hardened aircraft shelters at Kunsan Air Base in South Korea, where elements of the U.S. Air Force are forward deployed. This is it opening and closing of a hardened aircraft shelter. Our adversaries are hardening their air bases. This article, and another follow-up one that we're going to go through very briefly, shows the hardening of Chinese and Russian air bases. Clearly the air bases that were struck today were not hardened. That said, that is clearly a large door. This is Guam, showing its proposed defense perimeter, its map showing radar arcs, restricted airspace associated with enhanced integrated air missile defense systems. And as we scroll down, we can see a look at the kind of open canvas top shelters in use on the flight line at Seymour Johnson, now seen here after a snowstorm in 2022. This is the kind of shelter the United States uses. That, open ramps, and this is what's happening in China. Some of the 16 aircraft shelters at China's air base seen here in a partial image of the facility taken May 3rd, 2024, that was recently made available on Google Earth. A satellite image showing 16 aircraft shelters under construction. 11 new aircraft shelters under construction. Pictures said to have been taken showing a KJ-200 airborne early warning and control aircraft in one of the large circular shelters. This is another picture from inside the circular shelter, and this is a great picture of the scale of the shelters. And these are hardened aircraft shelters. This is a great image of that hardened aircraft shelter from the outside. This is a Twitter video of the shelter for a J-10 that opens rather quickly. Releasing the Rafale killer. The United States downplays the need for hardened aircraft shelter. United States Air Force generals downplay calls for more hardened aircraft shelters in Pacific Theater. This article is March 5th, 2025. I think hardened aircraft shelters need to be here on the homeland as well. I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. This talks about the reluctance of the United States Air Force to have hardened aircraft shelters, and this is the doctrinal reason why.
Welcome back to the LeMay Center's Doctrine Education Series. This video will help visualize the concept of Agile Combat Employment, or ACE. Straight from Air Force Doctrine Note 1-21, ACE is defined as a proactive and reactive operational scheme of maneuver executed within threat timelines to increase survivability while generating combat power. To unpack these concepts, first, we will provide the big picture of the different terms, moving parts, and places involved in ACE, and then we will walk through the different phases of ACE. Let's go over the big picture. This is a busy slide, but we'll cover it left to right and first provide a broad overview of the main components of ACE. On the left side, the Air Operations Center utilizes Mission Command to exercise command and control, such as issuing mission type orders. For more information, see our Mission Command video. Here, you can see high-value airborne assets and strategic airlift, both intra and inter-theater. Logistics serves a critical role in executing ACE. Strike aircraft also flow from home station to forward enduring locations or main operating bases. As we go right, you have the top and bottom main operating bases functioning as air expeditionary wings. In ACE, we must remember that all bases are fighting positions, not sanctuaries. These main operating bases will have multiple contingency locations or forward operating sites, which are typically closer to the fight and rely more on logistical support.
I think it's relevant to note that the Air Force themselves called these fighting positions. And I also think it's worth noting that the Air Force, in saying their fighting positions, is also advocating for not hardening those fighting positions. I think that needs to be stated. And we're going to actually go through what one of the generals said, justifying it.
They are signified by the green huts. Depending on the operational situation, forces will flow back and forth from main and forward sites, relying on airlift and logistical flows. In a perfect scenario, all of these are covered by air and missile defense, typically provided by the Army.
In a perfect scenario, on that island that is sitting right next to Adversary Red, that looks distinctly like Taiwan, I think it's safe to say that a perfect scenario is not going to exist.
It's important to note that ACE is a joint effort and is inherently part of joint all-domain operations. All the services have supporting and supported roles in ACE. All the way on the right is the adversary's territory, which is where the bulk of the threats are located. That is the overall picture of a battle space. Now that we have the big picture, let's step through the phases of ACE. As mentioned, ACE refers to a scheme of maneuver, so let's break down what this entails. Phase 1 involves setting the theater. We call this posture, and it is tied to all other elements of ACE as the starting point. We do this well ahead of need, ideally during the competition phase. It involves pre-positioning war reserve material. Forward operating sites are identified and ready to be sustained through agreements with host nations. In Phase 2, some kind of political or security trigger compels us to maneuver our forces from home station and from our enduring locations to disperse to our contingency locations or forward operating sites. Again,
those forward operating sites would include Guam, the Philippines, Palau, and now Tinian, along with aircraft carriers and probably numerous other sites, none of which are hardened.
Again, this is proactive and serves to both deter our adversary and assure our allies and partners. As our scenario progresses into armed conflict, certain threats have triggered us into reactive ACE in Phase 3. In order to survive and then regenerate, we disperse from our contingency or enduring locations that are under attack. The goal of ACE is to complicate the adversary's targeting solution and at the same time, in the next phase, mass forces from the dispersed locations to take the fight to our adversary. This is intended to be effective, not necessarily efficient, and will require innovative logistics to meet operational needs and boost our resilience.
Innovative logistics. Innovative logistics. Right now, we can't even build light transports or medium transports. I did a video about that just recently. It's tied up in Congress. We have no real means of supplying these forward operating bases in a highly contested atmosphere. We are not going to be able to fly C-17s and C-5 Galaxies and C-130s into these contested areas when you have the Chinese Air Force stopping you.
Finally, the last phase involves recovery and sustainment. This involves fixing airfields rapidly and maintaining and fixing our aircraft, whether they're Code 1 or battle damaged.
We've just seen 40 strategic aircraft destroyed on the ground due to drone attacks when drones were literally trucked right up to the bases. You don't think small ships can maneuver into those areas? This doesn't even account for the rain of thousands of short-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, some of which are hypersonic, that are going to be raining down on you.
And we continue taking the fight to our adversary by generating combat air power to fly, fight, and win. This is an all-hands fight, and every phase relies on the skills, expertise, and innovation of multi-capable airmen. To sum up, when applied correctly, ACE complicates the enemy's targeting process, creates political and operational dilemmas for the enemy, and creates flexibility for friendly forces. Thanks for watching. We hope
That's all we need to see. I thought it was worthwhile bringing that up because it's the U.S. Air Force current doctrine. That is currently our doctrine. I am scrolling right now. I'd highlighted the general through here. Was it this article or was it this article? Give me one moment. I'm going to pause it for you guys. Found it. I'm not a big fan of hardening infrastructure. General Kenneth Wilsbach, then head of Pacific Air Forces, the top Air Force command for that region, also said at a roundtable in 2023 Air and Space Forces Association Symposium. The reason is because of the advent of precision-guided weapons. You saw what we did to the Iraqi Air Force and their hardened aircraft shelters. They're not so hard when you put a 2,000-pound bomb right through the roof. That's one of the most arrogant and hubris-filled statements I could possibly hear. And I'm going to remember this. This really sounds like something you don't want to say, bro. What they're counting on is the active missile defense systems of all of those forward operating bases that you just saw. They're counting on those missile defense systems to counter any aerial threat, any missile threat. This article is out of the Times of Israel. May 9th, 2025. Source: Houthi missile shot down by arrow after U.S. THAAD missile missed for second time this week. That's what we're counting on, guys. That's what we're counting on. Now, the reason this really came to the forefront for me, and I wanted to go through all this before I laid this out. Last week, I was driving home from Florida, and I drove right past Scott Air Force Base. Literally right past Scott Air Force Base. Now, Scott Air Force Base is, let's bring it up here, Scott Air Force Base in Illinois is the headquarters for both the U.S. Transportation Command and Air Mobility Command. You can see it from the highway. We don't have hardened shelters there, guys. We don't have hardened shelters there. And how many container trucks do you see just driving along American highways? How easy would this be here? How easy? It would look very much like what you're seeing right now. That terrain might as well be in Illinois. How easy would it be for a container truck to pull up to any of our bases and have drones just fly out and start attacking our aircraft, our facilities, our men? This is why I'm doing this video today. Because the hardening of our airfields, the hardening of our infrastructure has to be done. The next attack isn't going to be a bomb, a 2,000-pound bomb being dropped by somebody, very likely, on your plane. It's very likely going to be hypersonic missile, ballistic missile, cruise missile, with either direct impact high explosives or cluster munitions or drones. Any of which would be far less effective if hitting hardened aircraft shelters. Yes, one 2,000-pound bomb is going to destroy one aircraft shelter. This is true. But we've seen in Ukraine what FPV drones can do. We've also seen in Ukraine what ballistic missiles are capable of doing the Iskander dropping hundreds of cluster munitions on Ukrainian air bases, destroying helicopters and MiG-29s. Multiple videos of this that were out in the open. The United States needs to invest in hardening its infrastructure, its aircraft shelters, and air bases specifically. In the last month, two great weaknesses have been exposed. Our lack of long-range air-to-air missile capability and production capability, for that matter, and our lack of hardened infrastructure. And instead of $4 billion being destroyed, if they did that on Diego Garcia, tens of billions of dollars destroyed. If the Iranians did something like that, and they certainly could. I bring up the Chinese because they are our nearest peer adversary, and they are our peer. They are not a near peer adversary. They are our peer adversary. And they make hundreds of thousands of drones a month for the commercial market, no less military. Their shipping containers are seen all over our interstate highways. I'm going to leave it to General Wickert, who in a recent video said it best. This is an Air Force general.
We no longer call the People's Liberation Army, we no longer call them a near peer adversary. They are a peer adversary.
And with that, I hope you liked the video. If you did, share it. Hopefully you'll subscribe. Let everyone know that Ukraine, in its audacious, incredible attack on Russian airfields, for the second time in a month, military history was made and exposed a major U.S. weakness. I appreciate you. Thank you.